Call the meeting to order at this time. Good evening, Exeter. Good evening, colleagues of the board, attendees, people at home watching on TV, on Facebook, and online, respective town staff. As chair of the Exeter Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Public notice of this meeting was posted on the town website and on the bulletin board of the town offices at 10 Front Street on December 18th. As provided in that public notice, the public may access the meeting online and via phone. We remind you all of the usual rules of conduct and decorum continue to apply. All votes taken tonight will be done via roll call by the clerk, and I'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of the board. When each of you state your presence, if you would, please also state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting and who that person is, which is required under the right to know law. So we'll start. Good evening, Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
I'm here in the room alone.
Thank you. Our clerk, Selectwoman Gilman.
Present, and I am in the room alone.
The Vice Chair, Selectwoman Molly Cowan.
Good evening, everybody. I am in the room alone.
And I'm Nico Papakostendis, and I am also alone in the room. Unfortunately, Selectman Brown is unavailable tonight, so it will just be the four board members I introduced. We also have with us our town manager, Mr. Dean. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? I am in the office, actually, despite the background that you see here, and I am by myself.
Terrific. Okay, we'll get started. We have 4 board interviews for the Arts and Culture Commission. Typically, we go in order of the interviews as they're in the packet, but we don't have 2 people logged on yet. So, Mr. Todd Herron, you were here first, so we'll start with you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your interest in this committee, and thank you for your application. What we'd like to do is we've reviewed your application and your credentials. I'd like to just give you a couple of moments to briefly talk about your experience and your interest in the committee, and then the board will ask you some questions, and we'll be done.
Sure. Well, as I've detailed in my application, I'm a working artist. I'm a poet and writer and musician, quite active around town and in the Seacoast area. And I also teach English at Phillips Exeter Academy. I'm interested in fostering and forging connections between the academy and the town. We have a number of working artists, writers, musicians, of course, in the academy community, and I know that they're eager to share their talents and resources, and I'm eager to help to build a bridge and to act as a liaison between the academy and the larger community.
Great, thank you. We'll open it up for questions. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
Hi, thanks so much, Todd. I was just wondering if there were any specific ideas that you would have to perhaps bridge, especially since you work at PEA, some of the opportunities that are available for artists like yourself on campus, whether they be faculty, and what's happening in town.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Lovey. And it's good to see you again in this context. I saw you in the webinar that we had in our anti-racist work at the Academy. It was there that you and others spoke about the importance of drawing the students into the town and to getting them connected and supporting what's happening in the larger scene. And so that's part of the spirit of what I'm hoping to do here. We have an embarrassment of resources, of course, at the Academy. We have numerous reading series where we bring in nationally acclaimed authors, poets, and writers, musicians, gallery openings. There are so many opportunities to share what's happening in our little academy bubble with the larger town. And I would specifically be interested in using resources like festivals that happen on the Swayze Parkway once we get back to the world where that's possible. Gatherings that happen in the town hall where we can bring in students and faculty members and visiting guests to the academy to share the resources that we have with the larger community.
Thank you. Great.
Selectwoman Gilman.
Yeah, thank you for putting in your application. I'm intrigued by the opportunity to connect with the Academy further, because we seem to go in cycles where the two bodies, the town and the school, are totally separate, and we don't know what's happening in each other's bodies. And the school has so much to offer to the town that aspect really interests me. So you bringing that piece, I think, can help bridge some of it. Some of it's just communication that we don't like. I only know what's happening at the Lamont Gallery because my daughter applied to go to the school, so her name's on the mailing list. But I don't know what's happening at the theater. And things like that. It's just small, things I think could be easily done. So I think that your aspect on being on the other side is an advantage. And that's really, I don't have a question. I just have an opinion, I guess.
But I hear what you're saying about the lack of communication. I think that, in our world of social media, it would be so easy to create those bridges between, shows that are happening in the theater or dance programs or reading series in the library, concert in Rockefeller Hall in the library, gallery openings. We could easily try to bridge that gap and draw more people to the campus and also draw the campus out into the town.
Selectwoman Cowan.
I don't know that I have any questions either. I would just echo the previous select board members who talk about being interested in the relationship between the academy and the town. I know that there is a lot of really creative, wonderful things happening all across the town, and so I'm really excited about an opportunity to localize and centralize a little bit of the information, not to say that anybody's going to stop all of the creative stuff and do it through our community or our committee. But I'm really glad to hear you talk about the academy piece, because I think that there is so much talent and there is so much access that we, regular Exeter citizens don't have access to, just because we don't have that same relationship with the academy. And so I think it's going to be really great that you're talking about that, even at the get-go. So thank you so much for applying.
Yeah, thank you so much too. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, there are so many artistic and cultural opportunities that the academy, as a kind of vortex, brings together. But in some really important ways, the academy represents a little microcosm of the world in our little white pocket of southern New Hampshire. And I would love to be able to share the amazing diversity of voices and experiences that we have here in the academy community, open that up into the broader town. I think that that's so important with the kind of cultural energies that we're working with and against right now in our current time, to bring the little world that is the academy out into the larger community, and to get them involved culturally, but also to get them involved in a service aspect too, working in ways to benefit the greater community and to forge connections and to try to dissolve some of the biases and prejudices that we have.
I think that would be really great. There's some, pretty prominent examples of academy folks who have, come out into the community and served in a political aspect, but we don't really have that same in the artistic aspect. So I think that would be really great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Todd, for your interest. Thank you for your time tonight, and I appreciate your patience through our late start here. We have a couple more weeks of interviews, at which point we'll be deliberating, and then we'll circle back. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to contact us.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Am I free to sign off now?
Sure, or you can join as an attendee and watch the meeting, whatever you'd like.
You can sign off, Todd.
So,
Go and enjoy the evening.
Thank you. Good to see you all. And hi, Scott Ruffner. I see you down on my screen too.
thank you.
Take care, everybody.
We'll circle back to our first interviewee, Bruce. Good evening, Bruce Jones. I apologize for the mix-up on the Zoom invitation. But we'll give you a couple of moments to talk about yourself and your interest in the committee, and then the board will ask some questions and we'll go from there. But good evening, Bruce.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I was surprised. I turned it on. It's already started. I just saw it start at 7. So, but anyways, okay. Bruce Jones. I've been in Exeter since 1986. I went to New England School of Art and Design, accepted to the museum school in Boston as a painter, and then I started my own business. We did ornamental plasterwork, where I was a sculptor and mold maker, and we restored a lot of theaters and churches. So I've been involved in the arts for a long time. Been a painter, been involved with, I did some local things years ago with Nan Lan Montang, before the second floor of the town hall was opened up. So I remember working on that and getting the elevator in and all that business. Organized a bunch of artists, and we did the Fine Art and Sugar Tour, which started with 3 of us locally, and then we've grown that to like 10 artists. So it's a self-guided tour of local studios and artists. So I've been involved in the arts for a long time, and would love to help out and volunteer to keep promoting the arts in Exeter and bring more in. So
Terrific. Thank you. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Thanks so much, Bruce. So as someone who's been in the arts for a long time and obviously lived in town, is there one thing that you think that we could do or the committee could do to really encourage more town gown-ish arts relations? So I know that we have a lot of artists in town, but what are we lacking? What are we not doing that you think we could be?
Yeah, I think over the last couple of years, there's been more, a little more energy from the local artists, and pulling some people in from, obviously Exeter is a focus, but bringing those people into town, I think brings more activity into our town and makes Exeter more of an art community. So I think the more the merrier is basically, because, I've seen the post, Exeter is anti-arts and, and all that business. And, so I'm just trying to, I think we can change that perception.
I think so too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Selectwoman Gilman.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for volunteering, putting in your application. I appreciate it. And I don't really have any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Hi, Bruce. It's nice to see you. I've been a fan of your paintings for years now, and it's nice to have this view into your studio here.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's my office.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your application here, and I am really interested in having you participate in this committee because I know that you know how difficult it was in the last iteration of an arts committee in town, and so when you talk about having a really inclusive and bringing all voices into the group and into the movement, that makes me feel like we are not going to fall into the same sort of the same patterns that we had, and then anyway, what I'm talking about, and if you could kind of elaborate a little bit more on what you were thinking about in terms of being inclusive and bringing everybody to the table, that's what I would be interested in hearing.
I just over the last little bit, I've met a lot of artists like in Hampton and Kensington, and I think bringing them in, if we can bring more of those towns in, those artists, they bring their friends in, so it just, I guess it makes it more of a destination for art, it's like, and I was glad to hear Todd say, getting the academy involved. That was one of my One of my thoughts.
Well, great. And I think that's right. You know, there are so many wonderful.
And I think having the town behind us, maybe with a little bit of push from there, it might help. It's like that.
Well, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for your application.
Yeah, thank you.
And that last point was an excellent point, Bruce. Thank you.
What's that?
I'm sorry, having the town behind you.
Yes.
Thank you again for your interest, your application, and your time tonight. As I explained to Todd, we have a couple more weeks of interviews, but I truly, truly appreciate your interest and also your patience with us tonight with our late start. So I'm sorry about the confusion.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you all so much, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Nice to see you again. Okay,
take care.
You too. Okay, next we have Anthony Calandrello, who's been waiting very patiently. Good evening. We've reviewed your application. Obviously, we'll give you a couple of minutes to talk about your interest, and we'll ask you some questions and go from there. So the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been in town since 1984. My wife and I live downtown Exeter. She's actually a musician who is adjunct faculty at the Academy and is also a working musician, teacher, performer. Although I have no artistic background, I can tell you that right now. I did get an immersion course as the chair of the Exeter Theater Company from 2009 till we disbanded in 2014, and really learned a lot about the arts community in Exeter, what the potential is, especially for that arts community in Exeter, and then also got involved in kind of a short effort to bring a performing arts group into town hall and use that and create that as a resource for the town and its performing arts. And I think that this Arts and Culture Council is much broader than the previous Arts Committee. I think this really needs to involve performing arts, visual arts, written arts. I would love to see Renee and her effort with the Lit Fest integrated into what this committee will do. And I think that as a town and as a business owner in town, I own a restaurant in town, I think that the arts can be a really significant economic driver for the community. I've seen what happens when, for example, Ben Anderson put on a few concerts at the town hall and brought 400 people into the town. I know the restaurants were busy. I presume the shops saw some fallout from that. And I think that just goes to improve the business atmosphere in town and improve the quality of life in Exeter. And it's something that I, as a resident, and hopefully will be a lifelong resident, really, really appreciate.
Great. Thank you. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
Thank you so much for your application. So I was wondering if you have any specific thoughts on, since you're a restaurant owner, how to connect restaurants with the arts and the artists, and like you said, musicians, painters, Lit Fest. What would be something that you think would be a great way to merge those two worlds?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, depending on the size and location of the restaurant. We've got a small restaurant, but we also have a riverside patio, which perhaps we could have music out there in the summer, and being along the river would be just a wonderful place to do that. I also would love to basically steal an idea from some of the other towns and do a sculpture walk. I think that would be a way to drive foot traffic in the town, drive traffic to restaurants. And I think that restaurants that can offer entertainment, live entertainment, should be encouraged to do that and coordinated with perhaps other music performances that are going on or festivals that are going on. And I think, even the smallest restaurant can support the arts by working with somebody like Arts on Front Street to put paintings up of local artists or artwork of local artists and encourage people to say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we had so many talented people in Exeter.
Great ideas. Thank you so much for sharing them.
Selectwoman Gilman.
Thanks, Tony, for putting in your application. Just for your all notification, I worked with Tony on the board also of the Exeter Theater Company, so I know what you can bring to the table. I really appreciate what you're saying about the connection between businesses and the arts and cultural life in town. Because we worked on the theater company together, I just had a question of, do you see anything that we can do for performing arts other than music, like a dance or theater or something like that? Do you have any ideas? Or
I do have a couple of ideas. I do think the town hall is a resource in the town that could be utilized more for all types of live performance, whether it's dance or music or drama. I also think there are other resources in town, and I think that something the committee should do would really be to do an inventory of those performance spaces that would be conducive to small, medium, and large performances. And I happen to also serve on the board of the YMCA, and I know that that's a resource that would be thrilled to be integrated with the community. They have a black box stage, for example, could do small performances out there. And so I think that by doing that inventory, understanding what resources are out there, I think we're going to be surprised at how many places we can do live performance in whatever mode, dance, drama, music.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Tony, and thank you for replying.
You're welcome.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Hi, Tony. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for your time and your application. I also was really excited to have your application because I think that there is so much work that we can do with food and culture and, really bringing people together to make this a destination. We don't have a restaurant week, for example. What can we do to sort of make that happen? There are some really boutique, beautiful, at every single price point in this town, there's something for everybody. So I'm really excited to have your expertise and your participation, and hope that you can work with other folks in every single medium of art to bring that to the commission. So thank you so much for your application.
You're quite welcome.
I guess no questions, just thank you.
Okay, well, hopefully I can live up to expectations and we can integrate food and the arts. I've talked to Dan Chartrand about bringing in perhaps either wine writers or cookbook authors, and maybe integrating that with a kind of a VIP ticket where they can get a meal along with attend the speaker, the author's speech. And I think there's ways to just bring in a number of other businesses along with arts.
Wonderful. All great ideas. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tony, thank you for your time tonight, your application. I thought you made some very unique points, and I think you'll bring an interesting perspective. So I appreciate your interest. And as I told the other interviewees, we have a couple more weeks of interviews, but we'll circle back. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you for the time of the board.
Thank you for your time this evening. Okay, we have one last interviewee, Scott Ruffner. I see you down there. Hi, Scott. You're muted.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes, perfect. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay. Well, I know most of you guys, but grew up in Exeter, moved away for about 15 years, and now I've been back for about 20 years, and have certainly been very immersed in the Seacoast art scene for the past 10 to 12, and then very active in Exeter over the past 5 years or so. Good news, what I'm seeing already is the points that the last three guys brought up are all things that I would have mentioned myself as well. So it's good to hear that a lot of people potentially for this committee are already on the same page. I've certainly worked with Tony on a lot of stuff, and he and I have been bouncing around this sort of art walk or sculpture walk for years. So I think that's something that certainly is a no-brainer for this type of committee. Also, with the town hall, I think the timing is great. One of the big issues that kept coming up obviously was, well, what about the IOCA? What about the IOCA? Now we finally know what the IOCA is going to be. So that certainly, opens the door to look at town hall and just how it can be used and be a resource for different groups and different people. One thing I'm excited about that, we've worked on for years through team is that, I don't think a lot of people understand that shifts in the industry, in the arts and entertainment industry, have moved in a direction of, you don't necessarily need the state of the art theater. You don't need, a $300,000 fundraising campaign to do things. You look at the Word Barn in Exeter, that's a pretty bare bones venue, but it's very successful. It's a destination. People love it. So there's great examples of things you can do in local and public spaces, even as they are right now, without having to do these huge capital campaigns. So the town hall is something that certainly excites me. I think, Swayze Park is, maybe some public art in Swayze Park. We keep seeing the granite memorial benches go up, which are great, but, if we keep going with too many of those, it's going to have a cemetery vibe in there. But I think there's opportunity there. There's all kinds of nooks and crannies and little green spaces that would be a perfect place for some public art. That could be a destination for people when they're on walks, that kind of thing. And then to Tony's point, we certainly have an emerging, foodie scene and some great restaurants, which I think we can get behind even more. I think there's all kinds of opportunities, and also opportunities for, other new committees where obviously there's some new energy with sustainability, with facilities, which obviously could complement a lot of the missions and the charter for this committee as well.
Great, thank you. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
Thanks, Scott. We've talked a lot personally about this, so I don't have a ton of questions for you. I kind of understand what it is that you're looking to do, and based on the events that you have done in the past, I think it would be a good fit for the committee. So I'll let others tap into you for that.
Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman.
Thank you, Scott, for your application. I follow along with Selectman Roundtree-Olaf, where I've talked to you enough that I know what your interests are and what you can provide and what you want to see in the future. So I thank you.
Okay.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Hey, Scott. It's great to see you. I again will echo what the previous speakers have said. I know you. I know that you're very dedicated to the arts and culture in this town. But for transparency's sake, I just would like to hear a little bit more of what you are looking for to come out of this commission.
But what's on the mission statement certainly is all things that I would love to see. I think some of them are, sort of being tackled, handled, by some groups already, whether it's our group, whether it's Art Up Front Street, whether it's the Chamber, whether it's Darren. I think Darren's going to be a great, Darren Wynnum would be a great sort of collaborator with this committee as well. So, I see it more as sort of helping to get behind, the groups and the artists that are here, in collaboration with the town, as opposed to where the previous committee was more hands-on producing events and actually, overseeing things, where to me, the charter of this is more of a collaborative effort to get behind things that are already happening and certainly come up with new ideas as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, I think that's a really good, indication of where, sort of your head is and where our head is, because I think that your skills and your, the work that you've done in the community is certainly right within this mission. So I'm, really excited and glad that you applied.
Yeah. And I would like to see, I sent out the thing to different people from all the different groups in town. I think it would be great to have someone on the committee, from Art Up Front Street, from Seacoast Artists, from Word Barn, from, all these places would be great, to sort of have someone, but already seeing Todd from PEA is great. Tony from the, the restaurant industry. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think that there's so much wonderful, there are so many wonderful things that are happening and so much more collaboration can take place. So thank you so much for applying.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Scott, thank you for your interest, your application. I think you'd bring also, as I said to Tony, I think you bring an interesting perspective. Your dedication and your commitment to the arts in Exeter is just, above all. And I think, as Selectwoman Cowan alluded to, your organizational skills are proven, and I think that you'd bring that to the committee. So appreciate your interest. We'll circle back in a couple of weeks after we do additional interviews, and I thank you for your time, and it's nice to see you.
All right, thanks, guys. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our board interviews. The next agenda item is the bid award for the water and sewer chemicals. We have that in our packet. Mr. Dean, is Director Perry here to speak to this briefly, or can you?
Actually, I offered to take it for her and Mr. Berube. I don't think he's here either. It's just vacation season, so we have a lot of people out at the moment. But I will tell you that we opened the chemical bids on the 14th of December, and they were opened publicly, so people were able to access the bids. The recommendations that you're seeing here before you in the packet tonight are actually all low bids. So that's what the recommendation is for these. I will tell you last year's bids, if you added up all of the items 1 through 4, 2019 for 2020, it was $40,153.96. Adding them all up this year, anticipating the same kind of amounts being used, it adds up to $37,891.15 for all categories. So we actually can expect a savings. It's a small savings, but it's $2,262.81, which is nice. So chemicals will be less expensive in 2021 than 2020.
Great. Mr. Dean, do we need to read the bids into the record, or was that done when you opened them last week?
No, well, all that happens with those is that they're made publicly available. We send them over to DPW, and if anybody asks for copies, we provide them to them.
Okay. And do we need to make a motion on all 4? To approve, or?
Yeah, I think it's good to approve each one individually as a bid item, just because they're different companies. So we're awarding the bid to different companies based upon the per gallon or per pound price that they bid.
Okay. So on bid item number 1, I would entertain a motion to approve the sodium hypochlorite 15% solution to Harkos Chemicals, Inc. in Nashua, New Hampshire at $1.09 per gallon.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. I would entertain a motion for bid item number 2 for the activated carbon to be awarded to the George S. Coyne Chemical Company, Inc. in Croydon, Pennsylvania at $1.2045 per pound.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. I would entertain a motion for bid item number 3 for the potassium permanganate to be awarded to Marubeni America Corporation in Harrison, New York at $1.63 per pound.
Mr. Chair, I will move that for potassium permanganate.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. And Mr. Chair, I usually do this as clerk, so that's why I know how to say that word.
I say I know. I had pomegranate on my mind, and I was trying not to say that. So I vote aye. Passes 4-0. And lastly, I would entertain a motion to approve bid item number 4 for sodium hydroxide to Univar Solutions USA in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, at 0.7899 cents per gallon.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce Joanna Bartel, our recording secretary, who's here this evening. Good evening, Joanna.
Good evening. I'm here and I'm alone in the room.
Great. Thank you very much. Joanna, before you came on, I represented that Selectman Brown will not be joining us. So it's a 4-person board tonight. Okay. Next, we have public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to offer the select board comment. We do request that if any public comment is relative to anything on the agenda, you wait till that item comes up. I do not see any attendees, but I will pause for a moment if anybody has any public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment. We do not have any proclamations or recognitions this evening. So at this time, I would look for a motion to approve the Exeter Select Board minutes from the meeting of December 7th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion or revisions or amendments? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair.
Aye, the motion passes 4-0. Thank you. We do not have any appointments this evening, so we can jump right into discussion action items. And first on the list is an update on the mask ordinance. Mr. Murray, you have an updated ordinance to present to us?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The memo included in the packet just goes over what we discussed at the last select board meeting. I'm recommending to remove a whereas statement in the ordinance that states, whereas every New England state with the exception of New Hampshire has adopted and implemented a comprehensive mask order. Due to the fact that that statement is now untrue, New Hampshire has adopted a statewide mandate. I'm also recommending that we revise item number 11 to read as follows. A face covering is not required for any person who is hearing impaired and any person while communicating with an individual who is hearing impaired or who has a disability, medical condition, or mental health condition that makes communication with that individual while wearing a mask or face covering difficult. Finally, I put in the memo that I recommended January 15th as the expiration date. I'd actually like to amend that, that's all right, to February 22nd, keeping with the 61-day provision in the ordinance. Also, if the state does expire their mandate on the January 15th, we can continue ours and terminate as we find necessary, but I'd rather not have it automatically set to terminate and then find out that we need it longer. It's an easy ordinance for us to terminate, given the provisions. It's harder to keep it going if we allow it to terminate on its own.
Okay, and that date again, James, you're recommending is February 22nd?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Any discussion or questions for James from the board? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I do have one quick question for James. Hi, James. Thank you so much for your work on this. Can you detail, just for the record, what, if any, are the major differences between the state ordinance and ours?
So one of the big differences I noticed is the age. The state requires anyone with a age 5 and up must wear a face covering. Ours is 10 and up. I've reached out to the AG's office to actually see which one takes precedent, and I'm waiting to hear back. I haven't got an answer yet. Other than that, they're both pretty, they pretty much cite the safer at home guidelines, and just where social distancing is impossible, you must wear a face covering.
Okay. I mean, I would be in favor of going with the state guidelines there, just so that we're not causing confusion, and having it be 5 and up.
Sure. If you'd like, I can revise another draft for next meeting on that.
I'm happy to adopt it as amended if the other board members are okay with that. But yeah, I would like to be as consistent as possible so that we're not sending mixed messages.
Absolutely.
So what we could do, Mr. Chairman, is if the state comes back to us and says, that is, I would expect the state to suggest that we would be in the right if we were making ours more restrictive rather than less. So I'm not a gambler, but I would say that they will probably come back and say our state mandate is going to be the precedent one, and we would follow that. So if the board is in agreement, what we would do is, pending that response, we would simply amend the current mask ordinance to reflect what the state tells us, presuming the answer. And if the answer was different, I think we may alert the board and come back and have a follow-up conversation. But I would recommend that we make that, if the board is comfortable that you can accept the amendments as proposed by the health officer tonight, we can update the ordinance with the amended date.
Okay. Is the board comfortable with that resolution?
Yes, I am.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion.
I can do it. I would move that we approve the changes to our Exeter Town mask ordinance as proposed by our health officer.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan?
Aye.
And clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. Great. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
And did you want to take up the date, Mr. Chairman, the extended date that Mr. Murray
Yes. Selectwoman Cowan, would you like to make another motion adding the date?
Yes, James, can you remind me what the date was? It was
February 22nd.
Thank you. I move that we extend our mask ordinance to expire February 22nd, 2021.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan?
Aye.
And clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Great. Thank you. Okay, next we move into the budget, the FY21 budget calendar, and also a continuing discussion on the HB 1129 option of deliberative session town meeting.
Mr. Chair, excuse
Yes.
me. Can we rearrange the order to put Chief Wilking and his memo up before we go into the budget, et cetera?
I don't have a problem with that. Is the board okay with that? Selectwoman Cowan, Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf? Okay, I think that's an excellent idea. Hi, Chief.
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me again. And I appreciate it, Julie, but I was going to hang out for the budget anyway, but here we go.
Can.
So obviously, we always say we wish the news was better, but it's not getting better. It's more of the same. We've heard. I see it's in the packet, but New Hampshire's seen another 6,000 people test positive. 45 fatalities, so deaths related to this in the past week alone. And Rockingham County is doing extremely well for a very long time. And Rockingham County lost 6 people last week, the first in almost 6 weeks. So that's a bit bittersweet. The string was great, but here we are back to reality. Exeter is at 285 total cases. And I still want to paint as positive light to that as I can. All of our neighbors, all of the communities our size are in the upper 300s and breaking 400, and here we are with 285. I still think it's a testament to what we've been doing and your resolve to update that ordinance again tonight. And I see people downtown wearing masks. My wife and I were walking it just yesterday, and there were a handful that weren't, but the vast majority were all complying and doing a great job, and it didn't seem to prohibit people from shopping and having fun downtown. On to the vaccine. James and I have been on a number of conference calls all week. The news remains consistent, although there's some small variations. The New Hampshire National Guard, as well as DHHS and the Seacoast Region Public Health Network, is planning to set up a regional vaccination site. That site has been determined to be the Exeter High School. The police, National Guard can create a secure area where it's by invite only, so people will have to have their name checked in, a lot like voter checklist. If you're on the list, you continue on, and that vaccine would be administered at that time. And there's going to be a spot there to be a 15-minute kind of waiting period to make sure that everything looks good. By all indications, we're on track for that. I know James was on some calls today, and I'll give him a chance to chime in. But we're still looking at having the vaccine in New Hampshire this week. By all accounts, it is on the way. By the 26th, we should be able to have the site ready. And the plan all along, well, for the past 2 weeks, has been to begin the process of vaccinating that next group of individuals around Monday, the 28th. And the individuals in line in the 1B changed slightly. I spoke to the police chief today, and then the Police Chiefs Association has received word that they may have to prioritize law enforcement people, but I have not heard that. So perhaps EMS, direct patient care workers, will remain in the priority list, where the peripheral, including staff like myself, who does see patient care every day, would not be prioritized for this go-around as we wait for more vaccine to come into the state. So we're encouraged. We remain excited that the vaccine is here, and continue to wait for some guidance from the state on what's going to happen. But I can tell you that all of the town of Exeter's first responders, fire, EMS, PD, dispatchers, and all associated personnel have been forwarded to the state. They have our names, they have our email addresses, and from here I'm told they will contact the person directly, and there'll be an opt-in, a short questionnaire to make sure that there aren't underlying health conditions like severe reactions to previous vaccines, and then they'll be scheduled or be able to choose a time for their vaccination. So from here on in, it's pretty much state and employee driven as far as when that's going to happen. I'm sure we'll hear word, but we're kind of in that loop. PPE is still doing well. We're still seeing a number of calls a day. Excuse me. The town of Exeter, as we said, has 285 total cases, but we're seeing about 40 to 45 active cases remain on the list, and the state is tracking the primary residence of those people, so we get a prompt when we roll out if there is a known COVID positive for an address. That's all we get, and then so we can take precautions. Chief Pizon just received another delivery of protective gowns and masks last week. Things are doing well. The other thing to report is the rapid test. The antigen testing has been changed from monthly to weekly. So we're receiving enough test kits to do all of our personnel on a weekly basis. What that means for Exeter is the very first day of each rotation of a shift gets tested. So we work an 8-day cycle. I know it's an odd week, but every 8 days, all of that shift will be tested. And if they're positive, obviously they forward on to a PCR, more definitive test. If they're negative, they remain at work. And that's been working well. So weekly test, we hope that'll keep everything moving smoothly. I will report, COVID finally hit the fire department. We've been living a very charmed life for about 10 months. We've had our first employee that did test positive. That employee noticed symptoms on the 9th, was tested on the 11th of December, and obviously immediately came off shift. I'm pleased to report that he's doing very well and no longer has symptoms, and the state public health has cleared that individual to return to duty on Wednesday, the 22nd. So all positive things. Yes, we had our first positive case, but we weathered it well through the mask wearing and the testing. So that was the only case at the firehouse. We expect him back on Wednesday. We do have one person out on quarantine due to a family member who is positive. So we're down 2. No one's coming back Wednesday. Lastly, on my list, I would just like to do a quick shout out. Chief Paisan and I and a short group of individuals interviewed for firefighter candidates. The last bullet on my report, again, is a positive asterisk here. We had 30 people, 30 individuals apply for open firefighter, EMT or paramedic positions. We interviewed 17 great candidates. Kind of narrowed our list down, and out of the top 4 or 5, we made 3 offers. Paramedic Christopher Bradley from Pembroke, Mass. has agreed to start. And more importantly and exciting for us is our 2nd and 3rd woman firefighter, a female firefighter, will be coming aboard in January. Firefighter Hope Moore, she comes to us from Milton or the Wakefield area. And Micah Wanetti from Manchester. So they're both certified firefighters, passed all the parts, pieces, of physical agility tests, and we'll be continuing on. And we hope to have all of them on board by mid-January, targeting the week of, I know 18 is a holiday, but that week will be the week we kind of finish all of the hiring and background checks and all that. So we're excited for our first round of hires in a while, and we'll be inviting them to our team. So that's what I have, and I'll quiet down so James can chime in if he has anything to offer.
Well, first, Chief, that's fantastic and exciting news.
So we are too, and as Russ knows, he and I chat regularly. We have a couple more in the pipeline. The first of the year, I'll report on a couple more retirements that are going to be coming due. So, but obviously we don't have those positions today, so we don't have a position to offer. But with 17 interviewees, and many of them were excellent candidates, and we were able to scoop 3 right away. I won't lie to you. I'll tell you that hiring fire EMS, and I think the police chief would come here to say the same thing, it is an extremely competitive job market out there for certified firefighters and law enforcement officers to try to get them on board. So we're very blessed to have 3 quality individuals that we have all the confidence in the world will do very well for the town of Exeter in the future.
And I will add from my end that I'm as excited as the chief is when he brought me this news that there were these candidates that were available and that we could get them. It was great to hear that. So we worked together closely on it, and like I said, I'm excited just like he is. So we've got 3 great candidates that are coming onto the department, 2 women, and that's fantastic. It's a great day for Exeter's Fire Department.
Chief, great job on the hires, and also really great job in keeping your team as safe as you've kept them through this pandemic. I mean, I'm happy to hear that the one employee is going to be okay and coming back to work later this week, but I think it's pretty impressive. I've talked with people in other surrounding towns. You and the team have done a great job. Thanks.
I thank you so much, and your support is key to that, and we enjoy a great relationship. So thank you so much, and happy holidays to all if I don't get a chance to offer later.
Thank you. Before we get to James, any questions or comments from the other board members?
Yes, Chief, I have a question, well, it's about the quantity of vaccine that's coming out. I know the whole list of 1A and 1B and the second rollout and the breakdowns of them, but the numbers that we heard were coming like almost cut in half a week later, and I don't know if 100,000 people are in 1A and we only get 9,000 vaccine vials. What do we do about that? Where does the town fall in there?
Yeah, you asked a great question, and we were as disappointed as you. Obviously, when and I'm going to speak globally for first responders, not just Exeter, but when we heard that we were in the category 1B, certainly it's a priority position, but not the most priority. And we were disappointed that New Hampshire only received 9,000 of the promised 12 or 13,000, so they were not able to get through the vast majority of healthcare workers and certainly those nursing home folks. So they're still working on that today. And I would assume, but you know what happens when you assume, that a good number of the Moderna vaccines were shipped. We were originally told 25,000. We're still very hopeful. The call I was on today felt the state would be in the 24,000 range. The vast majority are going to have to go to catch up on those healthcare workers that work in the front line and still those most vulnerable in long-term care. What that does for public safety, whether it's fire, EMS, or PD, is puts us back into that January timeframe. We have been assured by our state leaders that the vaccines will continue to ship regularly. You and I can both ask what that means: weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. But we can only hope that the food chain, the supply chain, will be able to have them out regularly, and eventually we will be able to fulfill the needs. But you're spot on. The numbers I'm hearing are about the same between nursing, long-term care, those absolutely most vulnerable over the age of 75, plus all the police, fire, EMS, not only career, but the call volunteers make up 3/4 of the population of the certified firefighters in the state, and EMTs of about 6,000 to 8,000 of volunteers. So they work from home, go back, take everything that they do at work back home. So it's important that they receive the vaccine too. But it could be delayed. We're going to stay positive and hope that the email comes out that our guys and gals can get in line. But I'll put it in the category. It is what it is. We can't make it. We can't go get it. So when it becomes available, I'm hoping that the initiatives we're pushing out now will allow everybody to volunteer and go get the vaccine.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Any other comments for Chief Wilkin? Great. Thank you, Chief. James, do you have any other updates for us other than the mask ordinance?
Well, like the chief said, we're getting new information about the vaccine. We're working on that. I've been tasked to do a couple compliance inspections from the AG's office for a couple businesses in our town. They did just fine. No issues there noted. But the public is making calls to the AG's office about what they're seeing. And while sometimes it's, in one case specifically, it was a misperception. An individual with asthma wasn't wearing a mask in the back behind a counter. That could be concerning to a customer, but given the medical situation there, it was deemed that it wasn't an issue. Things like that are coming up more often. I'm getting more calls from businesses about individuals working for them testing positive and what actions they should take. So I've been working a lot with the state, the public health nurses down at the state, to kind of give better advice to these businesses on, when people should quarantine, who needs to quarantine. These calls are just coming in a lot more often. So it's kind of hitting a little more close to home these days, definitely more than we saw in the summer or even the spring. Other than that, I have nothing else to update at this time.
Great, thank you. Any comments for James? Questions for James? Okay. Thank you both. Mr. Dean, we'll circle back to COVID-19. I know you have some updates. I think Mr. Wyndham's going to join us later.
Correct. That's right. Yeah.
So we'll circle back. And then we also, where this is most likely our last meeting before 12/31, we need to address the Swayze Parkway and whether or not we want to extend closing the road. So we can do that under the COVID-19 update. I believe the last motion was to keep it closed through 12/31/20. So we'll jump back to the FY21 budget calendar and the HB 1129 discussion. I thought Attorney Mitchell gave a pretty thorough presentation in our last meeting. Essentially, the Select Board has a decision to make whether or not we have a deliberative session live or whether we follow the temporary HB 1129 virtual meeting. I'm not going to ask for a vote this evening because Selectman Brown is not here. And I really would like all 5 members to weigh in on this and also to be involved in the vote. We will be meeting again on January 4th, but I think, Mr. Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of the timeline, we're going to have to vote on this on the 4th. Yes, I think so. I don't think it can wait any longer after that. Because we'd really be squeezing it at that point. We anticipate that the board would meet on the 4th of January. And then the next meeting after that is actually the budget and bond hearing, which we fold into a normal business meeting. So we would have, as part of that meeting, the budget and bonds hearing that we traditionally do. So that's actually a Tuesday on the 19th. So really, in order to really get this in motion and get it where it needs to be, the 4th is really sort of it's a drop. I would call it a really important date to have that decision done by. Even though we're not going to call a vote this evening, I would entertain any comments or questions from the board regarding the 2 different meetings that we could have.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to weigh in with some discussions that have been happening with fellow state reps and selectmen from other towns who are struggling with how to do the part that really bothers people is that presentation meeting is done and then people send us questions electronically or somehow remotely, but they don't get to interact the way you do at a deliberative session where someone can comment on somebody else's comment or proposal. Mm-hmm. So the question came up of whether we can do it via Zoom and use the chat function, which right now we don't use because of 91A reasons, mm-hmm. but that chat function can be recorded. Right. So I guess I'd like to know if that's my concern, is that the interaction is going to be stunted and people are going to feel somewhat disenfranchised from the conversation about whatever it is we have to talk about. So I guess I'm going to put it out there. Maybe that's something Walter or the NHMA can comment on. They haven't yet, but it is something that is very concerning from this piece of legislation. And then the other ballot, the alternative ballot thing, is also a surprise and concerning just because of what it will do to us if. There's some question of if the first question on the alternate ballot is, do you accept this form of voting? And if the simple majority is no, then there's some question even if our elected officials are actually elected. It's just very poorly done.
No, and you bring up a good point, and this isn't ideal, obviously, but I thought Attorney Mitchell indicated, aren't there 2 ballots? That the elected officials will still go forward, but the rest of the warrant articles would not. Right. That was my understanding. And I would agree with the chair. Well, at least that's the advice we've gotten, is that we have 2 zoning amendments and the elections article that we traditionally have. And right now those are queued up as articles 1, 2, and 3. And the advice that we've received is that these articles would be called the initial ballot. So they would be called the initial ballot and not the alternative ballot. So those would be voted regardless.
Yeah, I just brought it up because in the conversations that I've had, there is some question that if on the alternative ballot, which is the other things that people have a choice, petition articles and other warrant articles, that if the vote is to declare that is not the preferred voting method, therefore everything after it is null and void. How can that still be a valid election if half of it has been negated? It's a good question. Mr. Dean, can we have Attorney Mitchell available on the 4th so that if we have outstanding questions, we can get these answered? And perhaps in the meantime, you could reach out to him on that one. Yeah, sure. And to Selectwoman Gilman's point, on the point that she just made, I'd turn that question right back to the legislature and say, you created this law.
and you answer it for us. I mean, that's just, it's, to me, it's not, I mean, obviously we want to work with people to make sure we get things as functional as we can. But at the end of the day, this is likely a legislative issue that needs to be answered through the legislature to make sure that we're working in concert with NHMA and the legislature to make sure that we have an effective process. Because I know we all have COVID-19 concerns this year. I mean, nobody is without those concerns. We all have those concerns. So the idea would be to try to make this as functional as we can and make sure that it serves the purpose that it was designed to do. So hopefully we can get there. But I will have Attorney Mitchell on the call on the 4th of January. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something that would go through the Secretary of State, correct? If we had questions about the interpretation.
Well, the Secretary of State for local elections always says that's not their land. They leave it to the locals to deal with that, and they always have. They say federal and state. Now, will they be more active this year because of the COVID situation? I'm sure they will try to help us and lend their support like they have in the past. We have not heard anything official from the Secretary of State's office about this process so far. So.
Well, and you're not going to get anything changed before the election because the House, we don't even know how we're going to meet on January 6th, which is convening day. So I guess it is up to us how we want to interpret it.
Good question, though. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf?
No.
Sorry, I thought you had your hand up. I'm sorry. Selectwoman Cowan, any questions or comment?
I mean, I keep going back to what Selectwoman Gilman said about, worrying about people holding back in terms of participation if a Zoom meeting is possible. And I think, as we've seen in our own select board meetings, people are not afraid to hold back at all. And I also wonder if there's a way to have, submitted comments or, something that is submitted before or during that they don't have to, type in or speak. Because I want to make it as safe as possible and have a forum where we can invite as much participation as possible without disenfranchising folks and also without having to, have some sort of drive-through vote, which, that just might be how we have to do it. And then we'll just have to do that. But also, and this might be a question for Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf, because I don't know the capacity of different platforms. I guess we'd have to have something with the availability of however many participants. I know that we can go on past participation and say, 100 people are going to show up, but I don't know if that's the case. And so I wouldn't want to disenfranchise folks just because we don't have the actual capacity to have more than 200 folks on a Zoom meeting.
I just want to make sure that when we say, and I understand this is a unique year, but and the board is entitled to use any word you want, but disenfranchise is a tough word to swallow. And we're under emergency orders, so it's just a unique situation. I totally agree. I understand what you're saying, but I just think this is going to be do our best type stuff as we try to grind through this. So I'd like to enfranchise people as much as possible. I don't believe there is any. Selectwoman Gilman might correct me on this, but I have not heard anything that a deliberative session via Zoom is an option. That you can actually, if you're going to actually have a deliberative session in the traditional way, you have to do it in person. There is no Zoom virtual provision that I'm aware of. That's something that we could lobby for certainly in the next few weeks and see if it can gain any traction in short order. And we can certainly put that out with the holidays, and we can get NHMA's position on it and find out what's going on through them, and maybe Selectwoman Gilman can ask around the legislature and find out what their feelings are on it. But to my knowledge, there is no ability to do that you have to do it in person.
The deliberative session you're saying has to be done in person?
If you actually decide to hold a deliberative session in the traditional way, that it has to be done in person. It cannot be done via Zoom or be done virtually. That's my understanding. It's not specific that you could do it virtually. The law doesn't talk about that. The legislation doesn't talk about that.
All right, so the two sessions that they're talking about are just information sessions. They're not the deliberative session?
Correct. The virtual meetings that the HB 1129 is describing are two meetings held by the Select Board to review the warrant and take public comment on the warrant.
And then we do a live deliberative session?
No, you don't do a deliberative session. The two virtual meetings take the place of the deliberative session. But people can offer amendments to the warrant, but they need to submit it via electronic means and the means described in the legislation.
Right. Well, I guess the reason I brought it up is because I've been asked the question since my name got stuck on the top of the bill. What was the intention? And, the Senate made up this bill in the end, so I don't know what the intention was. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't prohibit us from doing a virtual deliberative session, does it? That's not how I read it. And I'm getting the questions from fellow state reps who are also select people struggling with this question about, one town's looking to see if they can do it half and half, have people in the building and then have, people who want to participate virtually do that. This is the same issue we're having with how is the House going to convene? How can we do it? I would rather have it be all one way or all the other, but I don't think we can get all in person.
Yeah, I just to the point, I think we have talked internally about what a virtual deliberative session would look like, and Bob has come back and said, from IT, we've gotten the sense that we could up our subscription to 500 people. I think we've actually done that in anticipation of having the bandwidth to be able to do it with the moderator and so forth. But like I said, the issue we have right now, at least today, is that there's no clear indicator that that's a path you can take. It's not an option as far as we know. So unless we hear differently, we're taking that position right now and saying that we can't do a deliberative session virtually. So, and the in-person option certainly isn't very attractive for all the reasons that we've been talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Selectwoman Rantriola, did you have a question?
It's okay.
Okay. So, Mr. Dean, I think before January 4th, if we could get the NHMA and also Attorney Mitchell and anybody else to kind of weigh in on that, whether that's possible. I mean, I thought in what I heard Attorney Mitchell say that it was one or the other. It wasn't, the capability wasn't there to do a Zoom deliberative session. I agree with everything Selectwoman Gilman said. Ideally, we want to have it the way we've always had it to preserve democracy. But, what type of attendance are we going to get in person in February if the numbers keep surging? And then what message are we sending if, we're telling people to be cautious and then, we're opening up deliberative session in a closed room like that? I don't know.
The other question I have, Mr. Dean, have we talked with the schools at all? Because we typically do a separate deliberative sessions, but single voting, balloting. We've begun to have those conversations with the schools from the facility perspective. I will tell you that, and again, I really want to make sure that I say that, the schools are very good to us. I think if we looked at this as a town government and said, we really are gung-ho about having an in-person deliberative session, they will make the hall available to us to do that. But I also think they're being good partners and they're looking at it through that lens.
I don't know what the dynamics are going on with the co-op as far as their deliberative session plans and what their plans are. So we don't really know that as of yet, but obviously that involves 6 towns, not just one. And there are probably different dynamics in each town that are in play there that might be impacting that process. So it's not going to be quite what we're thinking, is my sense. But we will see how that unfolds in the next few weeks.
Have we actually had a conversation with them about specifically that, or are we just speculating?
Nope, we've had some conversation with them about. I'm speculating a little bit about whether how their deliberative session might be. Okay. That is not something that has come out officially from the schools at all.
Okay, so I assume Selectwoman Gilman, that's specifically what you're referring to?
I was referring to more the school boards, and because they're the ones making the decision about whether we meet they meet their deliberative session in person, and because we have the ballot at the same time. Right. You know, it's one voting day, so their school boards have to be considering this law.
Right. So then I would assume before we meet again next, then a conversation directly can be had in regards to what their plans are for the deliberative session, so that we're not,
and
things that aren't accurate, and then we can just save ourselves a lot of.
Well, we're grinding. So remember, we're grinding sausage here. This isn't simple. This isn't just.
No,
I mean,
all I'm saying is it's.
I just want to make the point that it's not about saying things that are accurate or not. It's about their process hasn't concluded yet. It's fluid, just like ours is. So we're actually kind of working side by side, in tandem, but they may not have their decision about the deliberative session pinned down until later than us, but we definitely will check that and continue that conversation. I'm saying the decision path may be slower on their part than it is on our part. I'm not sure, but it's going to have to dovetail to some degree. And the election piece is definitely something we've talked about as far as being on the same page on the election, because we do have voting on the same day, and we definitely want to have the same type of process. So I'm just trying to clarify like where we are. This is very much just we're grinding it. No one has a completely clear answer at this stage of the process. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, I'll fill you in as I get other opinions.
Yeah, and I'd welcome the board members, if you know school board members and you want to reach out and get input and so forth. Like I work through the superintendent, but certainly, as you kind of make your calls and talk to people, it'd be great to feel that out and see how they're doing and what the thought processes are. Like I said, with 6 towns, it gets really complicated. We're lucky in the way that our process is quite a bit simpler that I'm finding than the one that they're faced with. So, and ours is tough.
Selectwoman Rountree, you kind of got cut off. Did you have something further?
No, it's okay. I think I'm just going to send a message to a couple of board members and Dr. Ryan to find out what their timeline looks like. Okay,
thank you. Okay, so we'll table this until the 4th when Selectman Brown is back. And in the meantime, Mr. Dean, you'll follow up with Superintendent Ryan, Attorney Mitchell, and the NHMA, and we, the board members, can reach out to our resources as well.
Right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other comment before we move on? Okay. Next, we have the FY21 budget and warrant articles. In our packet, you will see the legal notice that was posted on December 18th for the 2021 bonds, as well as the operating budgets. The public hearing will be held virtually on January 19th, 2021 at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And we would invite the public to attend and to also participate. With that, I want to open it up to the board. If we've had an opportunity to review the budget recommendations committee suggestions and recommendations, and whether or not we as board members have any revisions, amendments, etc. So I'd give everybody an opportunity. If you do, great. If not, Select Woman Gilman.
Sorry, I was reviewing something else. I haven't really found anything that I have disagreed with. I think it's been pretty trimmed down as much as it can be. The places that I would have subtracted were already subtracted. So actually, I don't have a question. So.
And we can revisit the budget also. I want Selectman Brown to have an opportunity to weigh in. But Selectwoman Rountree-Olaf, did you have any comments or questions on the budget? Recommendations?
I didn't have any comments or questions at this time.
Okay. Well, we will revisit this on the 4th. So, and Selectwoman Cowan.
I don't have any substantial changes that I want to make. I know that the BRC was really judicious in carving as much as they could out with the understanding of the likely financial situation we're going to be in. It was good to see, specific detailed scalpel cuts, like cutting out the travel budget and, things like that are likely not going to be necessary until 2022. And then, it's going to be helpful to sort of reevaluate how much we do on Zoom and how much, is necessary. I think, the one thing that I want to talk about, which I suspect we will in a little bit, is the IT portion and, hearing what that's likely going to do. So I will reserve my, if I think that we can cut anything else to a time where we have full board participation, and then interested to hear what the IT discussion is going to be.
Great. So it's interesting that you mentioned that because, first of all, I think the department heads and Mr. Dean did a great job with the draft budget. I mean, it was as bare as it could possibly be. Thought the departments did a very good job coming in with cutting what they could cut. The BRC this year did an incredible job, given everything that we've been facing, with the exception of one meeting that I watched as a recording because we were meeting the same night. I attended all the meetings and they all participated. They all asked good questions. The department heads were available. And I just think it's as bare a budget as we can get. But I have a concern. And it goes against my theory, as a former BRC member and as chair of the BRC for a couple of years, I'm the last person to want to entertain adding personnel, particularly in a year where all of the departments have been asked to make cuts. And particularly in a year where all the departments were told that there were going to be no personnel additions. But I witnessed something at the town offices on November 30th, the Monday after Thanksgiving weekend. Mr. Dean was off on vacation for a couple of days, and I took the opportunity to go down to town office to make sure everything was running smoothly. And there was a line out the door with people who were coming to the town clerk's office, presumably to register their cars, pay bills, etc. And as they waited in the line, they were being told that they were not going to be able to have any services that day or possibly the next day because the entire IT mainframe was down. So later that day, I met with Andy Swanson, and who's the IT director, and we talked for about 45 minutes. And I can tell you from experience, working with Mr. Swanson through the years when I was on the BRC, I don't think there's anybody more frugal that I've ever met, and how he can maintain the town's IT department with what he has and what the staff has to work with is just simply amazing. But the fact of the matter is that we're in a pandemic. We've become, a society that's being run on Zoom. All of our meetings, committee meetings, subcommittee meetings, everything's being run on Zoom. And a lot of the support staff are supporting us in our Zoom meetings. Bob Glowacki, who is the assistant IT director, I think 100% of his time is either Exeter TV or Zoom. So it's basically Mr. Swanson. And I don't foresee this changing in 2021. And I think that, until we get back to some sort of normalcy, I think the IT department's going to be stretched. I think our infrastructure is going to be stretched. The resources are going to be stretched. And I think as a board, as committee members, all of our committees, certainly our citizens who are expecting town services, when you come and you social distance and you wait 6 feet apart to be told that you can't have your transaction met because the system's down, is, I think, alarming. So to that end, what's the new normal going to be? Are we going to go back to live meetings? And if so, are we going to still utilize Zoom? So I think I would like the board to think about discussing January 4th, perhaps entertaining bringing on an additional IT person who would be in charge of assisting the IT director and also assisting with the Zoom and the Exeter TV. I see this problem getting worse. Mr. Swanson explained to me that the young people coming out of school now are not generalists like he is. They're specialists. Mr. Swanson's very talented. He's a generalist. He can kind of fix most things. He laughs when I refer to him as MacGyver. But it's just something to think about. Again, I'm not one that I'm the last person to want to add staff at normal times. But I think that it's something that's worth at least a discussion. And Mr. Dean, before I ask you a question, I would like Selectwoman Round-Triola has her hand up.
No, I just wanted to jump on to say, Chairman, I absolutely agree with you. I think we aren't going to go backwards in any kind of way when it comes to our technology needs. So it's imperative that we be proactive and start a process for searching for additional, because I can't fathom how a team of 2, 3 can handle the bandwidth that we're putting out and we're requiring for all of our meetings, for all of the additional things that we're hoping to do. If we're having conversations about deliberative sessions and it's going to be partially online, in person, there's still a lot of things that we need to make sure are constantly functioning. And, in part, that includes having a system that's constantly running and available so that we can be upgraded to the point where people can do registrations for a lot of these different things online and not have to come downtown and do that. So I'm completely in agreement that this is something that we should explore further.
Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes, I'd just like to chime in. I agree with what both Selectwoman Round-Triola and yourself have said. In fact, I don't know, I should have thought about it sooner because I've been saying for years that department has been understaffed. We've been fortunate to get some students to fill in and really bring us up through the Zoom aspects. But like you said, it's not going to go away very soon. And it's something that, and as Selectwoman Round-Triola said, it's going to go beyond what we need right now. We don't know, because once we've gotten comfortable with this, it may be what we're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And even so, despite that, we need to have a functional infrastructure at all times in our providing services to our communities. So it's a good idea. I'd like to hear from Mr. Swanson and Mr. Dean about, what level of we'd start at and, all the budgeting details, but, what we're looking for to get it all taken care of.
Thank you. And Mr. Dean, that was actually what I was going to ask you, is that if you could work up what this would do to the budget. Obviously, I think it's fair to say that I know 2 years ago when we added staff, we added a lot of part-time positions, which kind of helped soften the blow a little bit benefits-wise. But frankly, I think that this is something that we will need not only a full-time person, but I think to find somebody that is qualified would have to be advertised as a full-time position. So if you could work up those numbers, salary, wages, et cetera, so that we can see, how it's going to affect the budget if we decide we want to go that route. And if so, what else do we need to massage a little bit?
Sure. And, it's funny when you look at the amount of IT investment that we do in our budget when you talk about resources between contract services and assistance, human resources assistance, meaning full-time people. Mm-hmm. You're less than 1%. I mean, it's an incredibly small number. So when you add up water, sewer, general fund, you're talking about $31 million in spending with an IT budget of $285,000 to support that. So to the chairman's point, yes, we have been functioning on a gum and baling wire situation. And to the thing that he referred to that occurred a week or so ago, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was just a matter of time before we ran into that. And so it really does outline the issue very well that we have. And, we see this, Andy and myself, we worked on a job description. We have it worked up. We can present it to the board on the 4th of January so you can have some more conversation around it. And we can certainly put the numbers together as to what we think that would look like vis-a-vis our classification and compensation plan. So we'll give you something to discuss on the 4th.
Okay, thank you. Selectwoman Cowan, did you have anything to add?
No, I would just like to echo, I think the important thing is to not disrupt services to our community. And that means a really strong infrastructure, which means paying for it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other comments on the budget and warrant articles, we can move on to FY20 encumbrances. Mr. Dean? You're muted.
Sorry about that. So in the packet, there are a list of FY20 encumbrances that have been presented by the department. So each year, finance requests a list of encumbrances from the departments, and the total amount requested this year is $67,516 in terms of budget items. And then there are another several hundred thousand, mostly in warrant articles that have to do with water. And one is the Pickpocket Dam. It's a fairly large number, 110,000. The metered parking article that we did not implement this year, there's a request to carry that over as well. So I would say the request to the board is to vote to approve these encumbrances. And then there's one more that the planning department gave me. The board is aware there was a $2,500 line item in supplies that was actually earmarked for sustainability purposes, but was not spent. So they would ask that get added to the list of encumbrances to be voted on tonight. So that would move the top group to 70,000. Just doing the math real quick here, 70,016 to include the planning sustainability number. And then the bottom group would be $598,109. So budget and warrant articles as laid out.
So I'm going to repeat those numbers to make sure I have them right. The budget encumbrance is 70,016, 70016.
Correct.
And the warrant article is 598,109.
Right, for warrant articles, yes.
For warrant articles. Okay. Selectwoman Gilman.
Sorry, I'm doing two things at once here, watching and scrolling through our packet. Can you tell me where the list of encumbrances is in the packet? Because I'm just like randomly finding more pages of budget.
It's right after the budget.
Okay.
So if you go, it's actually page 86 of 110, if that helps, or 87 of 110.
That may help.
See, I'm being good not sharing the screen tonight. So I'm really holding back here. Normally, I'd throw it right up there and show it to you.
We appreciate your restraint.
All right, I got to thank you, Mr. Dean.
I'm really trying.
I know.
But Selectwoman Gilman, that first total amount has been revised to $70,016.
Yeah, I see it.
because of the 2,500 for the planning department.
Okay.
Okay. So we need two motions. One will be to approve the encumbrance request of the budget. Again, that amount is $70,016, and also a motion to approve the encumbrance request for the warrant articles in an amount of $598,109.
Should we do them together? Can we do them together, or should we do them separately?
How would you prefer, Mr. Dean?
If you just identify 70,016 of budget items and 598,109, I think that's the number of warrant articles in the same motion, and just identify them as such, then I think that should be fine. You can do it in one motion.
Okay.
Fair enough. So I would entertain a motion to approve the encumbrance request for the year ended 12/31/20 for the general budget. Total amount requested $70,016, and also the amount of $598,109 for the total requested warrant articles.
So moved. Sorry. Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectwoman Round-Triola.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
The clerk says aye. Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Okay, now we'll circle back to the COVID-19 updates. We already heard from Chief Wilking and Mr. Murray. Mr. Dean, will Mr. Wyndham be joining us this evening?
He will be. I did tell him originally that I anticipated maybe 8:45, so we're a little bit ahead of him. I did just send him a text message, so we'll see if he's around, and we'll be able to join us a little quicker.
Do you have any updates you can fill us in while we wait?
Yeah, I mean, my updates were more, I think, of the general type, just to say, I mean, I know we anticipate legislation passing at the federal level tonight based upon the latest news. And, you know, we're certainly following that very closely, the $900 billion bill that's working its way through Congress. So that is something that we're really pinpointed on internally here, especially with respect to the aid to businesses and what's going to happen to housing relief and housing stability and things like that. So really we're waiting and seeing, but not for much longer. We're going to be going into motion probably tomorrow on this to find out exactly what what we can expect out of the business relief provisions of the bill and the housing provisions. Those are the two big ones for us locally in terms of town government.
Okay. Selectwoman Gilman.
Yeah, I've got a question for Mr. Dean. In the bill that's going through the House and Senate, excuse me, and with the moratorium on, evictions and the housing stability that you were talking about, does any of that get processed through our social services department?
On the housing stability front? So
yeah, do we get funds from this for our own distribution to the folks in our community?
We have access to those funds if people qualify. What we do is we act more as a referral agency, so they'll come to us and we actually get them involved with the right people that are administering the fund. But the funds are being administered either by agencies like not-for-profits that have been designated by the state through their programs, or the state itself. So we triage the situation and get them into the right pockets. So
thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
The other thing I would add too is obviously we're focused on state and local aid, and that is something that Selectwoman Gilman and I will probably be talking about very quickly because a lot of what's coming out of the federal government right now is there's a lot of different information about whether states will get aid and what form will that come in. And then obviously if that does happen, how much of it is going to trickle down to the locals, as we've talked about many times. So we really want to keep our finger on that to see what finally comes out in the final bill. They were talking about 160 billion in some of the write-ups that they did that are in the packet here, but whether that 160 billion actually materializes and then how much reaches New Hampshire is really that's an open question. So we'll have to just keep our thumb on it to see what ends up happening with it. So.
Any other questions of Mr. Dean? Russ, while we wait for Mr. Wyndham, we can skip down to regular business. Do you have anything in your town manager's report to add?
I did have a few things. They were more schedule related. Just as a reminder, thank you to the board. We did poll people as far as the offices, and we will have a couple of people in here working, but mostly we will have the building closed on Christmas Eve. But we will have people that opted to collect taxes and do things like that to process things if they wanted to be in the building. But most people will take that as paid leave, take leave time on that day. So thank you for supporting that. And then, of course, we have the Christmas holiday on Friday. So the town offices will be closed that day. Just looking ahead to the week after that, New Year's Eve, we are open. That's a Thursday of the following week, and then the New Year's holiday is the following Friday. So that's just a little bit about the schedule. And then I did want to report that Dave Sharples has gotten some bid results on the Epping Road and Brentwood, Epping Road, Winter Street, Spring Street sidewalk project. And that project has actually come in over budget. So it's more than the warrant article that was approved back in, I want to say it was 2017, the 108,000. So we need about $41,000 more to match more state money for that. And we'll make a brief presentation to the board on that in early January. We do have money in the Sidewalk Capital Reserve Fund that we can use. And we also have some funding left from the SB 38 money. If you remember, that actually came through the governor's office back in 2017. And we still have a balance in that account of give or take, I think 10,000, maybe a little bit more than that, we'll see, to apply to the project. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that the bid prices are in, but we need to make up some money on that. Tax collections are steady. They're coming in. People are paying, so that's good. And they're able to pay online, and we've heard good things about the online payment system, so people are able to access it off the website and use it, so that's good for taxes if they choose to do it that way. And then in terms of years of service awards, we had that last Thursday, and we congratulated Janet Witten out of our assessing office for 20 years of service, Andy Swanson, 15 years in IT, Laura Zagopoulos, 10 years in finance, Kathy Croto, 5 years in planning, and my assistant Pam nicely gave me a 15-year award for town manager. So that was very good of her to do that for me. So wanted to just say thank you to all of our employees that reached milestones this year. And those are pretty good milestones all the way around. And I think that's all I had, Mr. Chairman, unless you have questions.
No, I just echo the congratulations to all of the employees and thank them for their commitment and their service.
Thank you.
Okay, as we wait for Mr. Wyndham, if the board wishes, we can go right into regular business. We have 3 abatements. And Madam Clerk, I'll turn that over to you.
Okay, let's see. Mr. Chair, I move to approve a veteran's credit in the amount of $500 for MAP 95, Lot 64, Unit 131.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Rountree-Olin?
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan?
Aye.
The clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve a tax abatement in the amount of $168.98 for MAP 110, Lot 2, Unit 103.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan?
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0.
And Mr. Chair, I move to approve a tax abatement in the amount of $121.26 for map 110, lot 2, unit 103.
Second.
Motion a second. No discussion. Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan? Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. We do not have any permits and approvals, so we can jump into Select Board Committee reports. Selectwoman Gilman?
I don't really have anything to report. The Heritage Commission and the HDC met, but our projects were not extensive to really report on.
Thank you.
That's it.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
Hi, the Housing Committee met last Friday. Just taking a second look. It's been a while since I looked at the notes. We're meeting again in January. We got an update from, hold on one second. Starkle gave us an update about what was going on with the Municipal Technical Assistance Grant Program. Other topics that we talked about were the cottage pocket neighborhoods, the tiny homes that I brought up before. Other than that, it was a pretty brief meeting, and we will reconvene in the new year.
Great, thank you. Selectwoman Cowan?
Yes, I had planning board where we discussed a plan on Hampton Road. And then we also took up the impact fees, which took the majority of the time on the planning board. And then we had the first inaugural meeting of the Exeter Police Committee, where we elected officers and introduced ourselves, and the chief went over the parameters and what we're expecting to cover in the committee.
Great. And when is the committee meeting again?
I don't remember.
Okay. It's in the calendar, I'm sure. And
it is scheduled in the calendar. I think we're meeting every 2 weeks, but I'll have to confirm.
And congratulations to Ann Sermon and Darius Thompson for being elected chair and vice chair, respectively. Selectwoman Gilman.
Yes, I just had a question for Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf. Or maybe it's not a question, but a thing. There's a piece of legislation about the tiny homes that's come up this year. So I would like for you to take a look at it. I don't remember the LSR number, but if you search on the State House website for tiny, it'll come out. I think they're still calling it tiny houses as opposed to tiny homes, but it's I don't know. Towns have already gone in and zoned for tiny houses, but now we're making a state law about it. So I appreciate it if you'd look at it and let me know what you think of it.
I'll bring it to the attention of the committee. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and Selectwoman Gilman, I believe you and Selectman Brown have started working on the first draft of the updated social media policy.
Yes, I sent Selectman Brown a few different examples from other states, other towns in New Hampshire, plus some opinions from a couple of labor lawyers, because whatever we do, we'll probably have to pass through the unions just to make sure it works for them. Selectman Brown did send us all a version of the proposal, which I think covers it nicely, especially referring to the RSA that regards the use of social media amongst municipal staff. So whenever you want to put that on the agenda, I don't know if the 4th is going to be too full of everything else. So
I would like to optimistically put it on the agenda for the 4th. We'll see, between HB 1129 and the budget, but I would like to at least have a discussion. I know you both worked really hard on the draft, so I'd like to try to get it on for the 4th because the public hearing will be the 19th. So we'll do our best to get that on. I did not have any select board. I did not have any committee meetings. Sustainability will meet the beginning of January. And I just wanted to take the opportunity. I know the letters of appreciation and the gift cards that we approved went out to all of the members of our respective committees. And I just would like to take an opportunity to thank each and every one of the members that serve on our committees, as well as town staff that have really dedicated themselves, particularly in this last year. So thank you to everybody. Mr. Dean, we have one piece of correspondence, if you want to walk through that.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. This is the RPC coordinates the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, and what these are infrastructure projects in the area. So the board can read it at your convenience, and then if you have questions about any projects, or you have a need to have more information about how to get a project into this pipeline, Mr. Sharples can lead you through that. And we also have 2 representatives to the RPC from the town that serve on the commission. So this is more to familiarize yourself with that, and then be thinking about other things that we certainly do, and try to organize enough to get things into this queue. It's not always the most efficient thing because federal money is involved, and so projects can take a long, long time to gestate on this list, but it's a good idea to be thinking about it and what it could do for us. So
great, thank you. So reviewing the board calendar, again, we'll be meeting January 4th. The public budget hearing will be the 19th, and then we will meet again as a board on the 25th. And after that, more to come on our board schedule, as well as however we conduct town meeting. Have you heard from Mr. Wyndham, Mr. Dean?
I have not. I was going to offer that maybe we have him come in on the 4th, and we can catch up at that point as far as what the latest is.
For the sake of all of our time, I'd rather not filibuster, and we can put Mr. Wyndham on the agenda first. How's that?
Sounds good.
Before we adjourn, I would just like to extend the happiest and healthiest holiday wishes to everybody, and a very safe and healthy new year. And I hope everybody can enjoy the holidays and stay safe at the same time.
Same to you, Mr. Chairman, and everybody else on the board, and Joanna, and our EXTV crew.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to follow up with that, just in the thank you, and especially thank you, and have happy and safe holidays to my fellow board members and the town staff, but also to our volunteers, which I missed the party this year, our volunteers and their families that support them. I hope, best wishes for all of you. Thank you.
And I'll see our departments, of course, this week, but the same goes to all of them as well. All of our employees who've done a great job this year. Thank you for recognizing them, Mr. Chairman, and everybody on the board. They definitely appreciate that.
Okay, if there are no other comments, and we would welcome any if there are, but if not, then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan?
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
I say aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Please.